everybody. Welcome back. We are here with Cosmic Chats with the wonderful Emily Nelson.
Hey, hi.
Hi there. Emily is a very esteemed actress. She trained in the theatre. You probably know her from being on True Detective, Maid of Honor. Go on IMDb, Emily Nelson. You'll see all of her amazing credits. She's also a teacher. She has her own studio for acting and works at various colleges. So let's give Emily a shout out and ask her the first question, which is, how would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never eaten one?
I guess I would say it's like a mushy, creamy, sweet bit of sunshine.
Ooh, the bit of sunshine is because of the feeling you get when you consume it, or the color?
I think so. Well, but a little bit of both, because the sweetness, it's not sharp like an apple, right? It's not tangy like an orange. It's just kind of like warm and yum. Like, it's just kind of, you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of that middle, like, kind of like sunshine. Like, sunshine's not abrasive. It's just, So yeah, probably, I'm sure it is influenced by the color though, because how could it not be?
Do you have it with like warm condiments on it?
I mean, you hot fudge, yes. Why not? That sounds delicious.
With ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, you can make banana ice cream, frankly. Have you ever had banana ice cream? It's quite delicious. You take frozen bananas.
All right.
Put them in a blender, a little bit of cocoa powder. And the cool thing is you can sweeten it any way you want. You want sugar? Fine. You want dates? Great source of sugar. You could even go stevia if you really don't want to have any, like, spike your blood sugar. It's not as delicious in my opinion, but it's still pretty delicious. And it's, what it ends up tasting like is, and then you can put in a little like coconut milk if you want or something. It tastes like a Wendy's Frosty.
Oh, you're making homemade Frosties. So here you are thinking you were going to have Cosmic Chats, and now you've just got a dessert lesson thrown in.
Listen, and it's good for you, depending on how you make it.
Lots of sweetness in this episode, I can tell. All right, let's get to the next question, which is, when did you have your first existential life crisis as a child?
I think probably when I was probably around 6, or it was either at 6 when my grandfather died or at 8 when my grandmother died. I think that was sort of the first, when there's really sort of a rip in the continuum, like there's really something very different happening and there's nothing anybody can do about it. There's no replacement. That's not going to ever change. It's never going to get better. Like, it just is. I think that's probably, I say maybe 6, but I remember it much more intensely at 8. But I feel like the two have to be related because they were so close in time,
Were you closer to one over the other?
Well, we lived with them both. And I think I was closer to my grandmother, partly because my grandfather was sick. And so I think that he, although he was very much there, he was just a little surly. I think his sickness, I don't think I was aware that he was sick. I think I thought he was grumpy. And so I think that was the way it sort of manifested for him, but not always. Those aren't my full memories of him. So I think I was closer to my grandmother just because she was a bit more hands-on and we lived with them. So up until I was about 7, actually.
Were you very close, connectively wise, to your grandparents?
Yes.
And one more than the other?
I think maybe in some ways my grandmother, but I really think of them as like a unit. So, and we were in their house, I just don't think there was much differentiation, and they were both retired at that point. So like they were home and, so I think I was closer to my grandmother because frankly, from age 6 to 8, I was just older. I could understand her more, you know what I mean? Like, so maybe on some level, my grandmother, but that being said, my grandfather was a really interesting guy. He was a geologist. I think there's a patent out there somewhere he has for a telephone pole, for like those wooden telephone poles.
Oh.
But then, right, I know, fascinating. And then he went to University of Pittsburgh, and I lived with him in Pittsburgh. And he went back and he was a voracious reader, voracious. That's what I remember my grandfather. He had thousands and thousands of books. I'm not even exaggerating. And he'd read them all and made notes in all the margins. He went back to the University of Pittsburgh, got, I think probably a master's in English. They liked him so much, they hired him as a professor straight out. And so then he became a professor of English at the Tower of Learning, right? The University of Pittsburgh. So that's what I remember about him, is books and the things. And I feel like he's the person I missed out the most on, because I think I would have connected with him the most. So he was a voracious writer and reader. So I've read letters of his and all notes in his books, but there was a huge fire and a lot of his stuff was lost. And it's a real shame, but just the stories I've heard from my older cousins and my aunts and that sort of thing. I think in some ways I have more of a created vision of him than I do of my actual experience.
So when we come down to Emily's creative vision, she did mention she was in Pittsburgh. She went to Carnegie Mellon School of Drama. That's in Pittsburgh. That's how we know each other. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to remind everyone to please put your love for Emily in the comments box so far, how much you adore her, and like, share the video, subscribe. Emily's going to remind you to subscribe as well.
Yes, please subscribe for sure.
That's right. We've got to boost it up so we can help the nonprofit run and we can get our outreach programs going. So this happened between 6 and 8. You were much older, beginning to get into the tween period of your life. Mm-hmm. What did you do behavior-wise that was different as a result of experiencing death?
Oh, that's a good question. I think in some ways it affected my brother a bit more, but he's a private person, so I won't say too much about that. But we moved to Chicago when I was 9.5. And so it was a whole new world and a whole new place. And, you know, there's a thing that you had asked me earlier that I think is a really funny story that I want to jump back to. You had asked, when was, as far as like existential crisis goes, like when's that moment when you realize that your parents are not perfect, right? And this happened right after we moved. It's sort of that drama of the gifted child. I don't know if you've ever read that book. It's a phenomenal book. And it just talks about how, you know, we have hero worship for our guardians biologically wired into us. That's right. And when that bubble is burst, it creates an earthquake of safety and, you know, review of the world. So when we moved to Chicago, it was a small town called Oak Park. And my brother and I, we moved in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the school year. And so our school was our house was just a like half block away from our grade school. So we could walk to school. But the house my parents had bought was called the Witch's House by all the kids who went to school there, because it looked like the Munsters, straight up looked like the Munsters house. It was black, straight shingle, 3-story Victorian, hadn't been painted in 80 years, had like a broken like Cupid on the front, a dead tree, like a tipped over, you know, just the whole thing. Like kids literally crossed the street when it came to our house. So that did us no favors trying to make friends that first year. They're like, you moved into the Witch's house? We're like, we did. So they were having a fun fair at the school. And so my brother and I thought, well, no better way to make friends than to just show how unreasonably competitive we are. So they had, right? I mean, that was good advice. And so they had this game where you like bounced a ping pong, and if it dropped into a fish bowl, you got the fish inside, right? Well, he and I were like, boom, 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 boom. And like, we cleared the place out of fish. So of course nobody liked us for that, but we thought we were amazing because we're like, we have all these fish. And so we brought home like 9 goldfish or something absurd like that. And somehow my mother had like a big glass bowl, and there was a bathroom sort of on the kids' side of the house. So we'd really moved up in the world. We had 2 bathrooms. It was very exciting. And so she'd put the bowl in the kids' bathroom, and all the 9 fish were in there. And so I went to school the next day, you know, and came running home from school to check on my fish because they were frankly my new best friends. And I run upstairs and I go in and they're dead. They're all dead. And I can't believe it. And somebody has taken the fish food and dumped half the jar of fish food into the bowl. And so, of course, I assume immediately that it's my younger brother, because who would be such an idiot as to, you know, dump, you know, who doesn't know how to feed fish? So I go running downstairs, of course, you know, so upset, to tattle on my brother and, you know, another horrible thing he's done to me in life. And it turns out that it was not my brother, it was my father. Ooh. And my mom was like, oh no, I asked your father to feed the fish before he left to work. And I was like, what? I was like, why didn't he scoop the food out? And she's like, I don't know. It turns out my dad never had fish. Like, he grew up very poor, and he, like, fish was not a thing they had. And so he thought there were a lot of fish and they were hungry.
Was he doing it like he was putting his salt on his fish at dinner?
Like, even, no, it was like he was pouring, it was like half the jar. It was so much food. He killed 9 fish in one afternoon. And it just blew my mind. I was so sad. I was so brokenhearted that he didn't know that. You know what I mean? Like, it just seemed inconceivable that he didn't know that, you know? And I think that was sort of the rip in my parental continuum, you know, of like, oh, you're idiots. No, they're not. But you know what I mean? Like, that was sort of, my child mind really went to the extreme of like ruh-roh, you know. And I remember he used to go to the movies by himself. And man, even though as an adult now, that's like one of my favorite things to do, you know, if we ever get to go back to movies. At the time, I would sit and cry. I just thought it was the loneliest thing ever that my dad didn't have anyone to go to the movies with. And now I realize, I'm like, yeah, he's like, no, I'm going to the movies by myself. Bye, guys.
Okay, time out.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even have anyone to get away from, and I go to the movies by myself. I love it, you know? So it's just so funny, you know, how your child mind, you know, evaluates things and what was important. And what was important to me then was that my parental guide, what do you call them? Guardians, understood the world. And if they couldn't keep fish safe, was I safe, you know? And then also community and being together, and the idea that my dad would, you know, I was so busy trying to make new friends in this new place that I think I was projecting my own sort of loneliness onto him, not having any concept that loneliness might be, or aloneness might be something to crave at one point in your life, you know, but for me at the time, it certainly was not.
When did you start loving going to movies by yourself?
I was back in my Oak Park days. We had a little theater called the Lake Theater, and there was a restaurant across the street called Khyber Pass. And I would go on a date. I'd take myself to Indian food and just eat like a huge, delicious, amazing, oh, I miss it so much thinking about it. And then I would go see a movie. And I just, so to high school, I guess, as soon as I could kind of get myself there, I guess probably 15, 16. As soon as I had wheels. I mean, there wasn't a ton of public transportation, so you kind of had to, and to go to a late movie, you sort of needed a car. So I guess it was probably once I was driving.
Was it your favorite thing to go to a late one on your own?
I think it was whenever I had time, because I was in the theater in high school. And so, you know, the time that, you know, you did school and then theater took up so much time, and I did some sports as well. So, you know, it was whenever I could.
So you had watched him go to movies on his own, think, rejection, abandonment, but then you started the same habit maybe 8 years later. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, once I was just like, you know what, I don't need to make friends all the time. I think like a lot of people, my friends' situation would go up and down over the years, and it kind of settled by around that time. I'm still friends with the same people I was when I was 16. And then, you know, we got very lucky. The college we went to had an extraordinary amount of pretty awesome people there, even though it was a small department. And so many of my friends today are 100% the same friends I had back then. So, you know, yeah.
It's quite fascinating.
I also love movies. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't have to be a social.
It's fascinating that something that appeared a dismissive, or let's say not positive quality about a guide figure, we'll say parental guide figure, then you actually started doing that same practice and it started feeling good. And this is quite fascinating that we can have resentment at something and then actually go and recreate the same thing ourselves without not necessarily being aware that we're doing the same behavior, right? So we learn so much by observing, right, and trying that out. Did you feel any stigma as a female going to a movie on your own?
I don't think so. I think I felt stigma about lots of things. It's not that I was free of stigmas, I assure you. I felt like kind of bold about it, actually. I think I just enjoyed it so much. And sometimes a friend would come with me. You know, sometimes I'd be like, hey, do you want to go to dinner and a movie? Like, I enjoyed doing it so much that I just didn't care to wait for somebody to give me permission. You know what I mean? And it's a small, you know, they were just right across the street each other. It turns out nobody's looking. You know what I mean? It nobody. I had stigma about, you know, friends. I had stigma about boyfriends. I never went to prom. I can tell you to this day that haunts me, that I couldn't get anybody to go to prom with me. So depressing. And
that was, you could only go if you went with someone?
Oh yeah. The school I went to, you had to go with somebody of the opposite sex and you had to go together. You couldn't go with friends. You couldn't go by yourself. You couldn't go with a girlfriend or a girlfriend. It was very traditional, old school, terrible at the time. Yeah. And the problem is that, well, there were two problems. One, I was not, although I did manage to have a couple of boyfriends in high school who were pretty cool. Overall, I was not a hot ticket, let's say. I've always made the mistake of having like drop dead gorgeous best friends who are like, you know, 1.5 feet taller than me. That habit has continued throughout my life. I can't exactly explain why. So I was definitely like, friend material all the time. And the guys that I did date were never in my friend group. They were, you know, boys I'd met elsewhere. But my guy friends were all a year older than me. So they'd already gone to prom and they just didn't want to spend the money. They didn't want to go again. They weren't going to go with me because, you know, they should have. Honestly, they could have saved me so much heartache. To this day, I'm still mad about it.
Let's say you ended up going to the prom, but it was a pity date. Would you then have had that memory of feeling less than because you were a pity date? Or you?
No, I don't think so, because it doesn't matter at prom. All that matters is that you're there. It doesn't matter whether there are plenty of pity dates there. And frankly, I couldn't even get a pity date. Like that would have been a step up. You know what I mean? I would have loved a pity date just to have the pictures, to go with my friends, to have the experience. I could have cared less if it was a pity date. Yeah. I just wanted to be included. And it's just so weird that there was just this one particular bar, this gate that I could not, and I tried, I asked people, like everybody said no. I mean, it was horrible.
Now, of course, those of you are thinking, why am I asking so many obvious questions? I grew up in the UK and didn't have prom. So no, I think they do something about it now, but there wasn't prom. There was a sweet 16, which was 100% traumatic for me, including the deodorant was not antiperspirant and blue dye. You know, do I have it now? Gosh, I don't know. Blue dye on the inside of my armpits, and my popular friend telling people to go to my sweet 16 birthday party, which became a big deal because, you know, as a single mom, she had to do what she could to even have it happen. So I have a whole lot of other stuff, but the actual prom premise was not in my experience. There were other things I could feel bad about myself. So
no, I think all the questions you're asking are fair, because prom does vary marry 4 people and in different places, like some proms were open. People were like, just go with yourself or go with a group of friends. I'm like, yeah, I would have if I could have.
Right. So having had that and knowing that it was an exclusive event to make a certain bar, did you find yourself when you would host activities being more inclusive naturally?
I guess so. I think I've always been pretty inclusive. I mean, I am sure I didn't escape life either being or appearing like a bully in different times of my life. Yeah, I want to say yes, but I don't know if that's completely honest. So maybe.
Maybe you were like that before already.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of raised that way, so I've always been pretty inclusive. I've never really had a sense of like us versus them. I did get in trouble in junior high because junior high where I went to school was only 2 years long. So 7th and 8th grade, and that's it. And so in 7th grade, I went to a new school again. I didn't know anybody there hardly. And there's just something about me. This is true at Carnegie too. Nobody wants to make friends with me right away. It takes me a long time to make friends. And part of the reason is I just lay back and wait because I feel like, how when you go into a new group setting like that, there's sort of this hustle where people try to find their groups. I stay out of that because the groups that initially form are never the groups that stay. And they're always on superficial levels. And so I just kind of stick to myself and wait till I sort of more organically make a connection with this person or this person. I just, there's no hustle for me about making friends. And so I kind of got adopted by this group of girls, for lack of a better word, were sort of the nerdy girls. You know what I mean? They were very inclusive and sort of very, what's the word? They were still young. They were very like girls, they didn't hang out with boys and they weren't rebellious. And I was, like my best friend was a boy. I was already like, every now and then I'd steal a little, like, I'd take sips of my parents' drinks when they weren't looking and, things like that. Things that were very, in the UK, that wouldn't be naughty, but here it was very naughty, And so when I got there, and I was grateful for their friendship, they were cool girls, but it wasn't the most fun for me. I wanted to go hang out with boys. I wanted to sneak out after dark. I wanted to go to parties. I wanted to like, just do all the terrible things you weren't supposed to do. And that's what I wanted to do. And 8th grade, I ended up making a couple of friends through ice skating who were more in the quote unquote popular crowd. And they started inviting me places. So I went. And some of the girls who I'd been very close with the year before, who were awesome, they were awesome girls who turned into awesome women. They really resented the fact that I had sort of branched out and gone to a different group of friends, and accused me of thinking that, I was too good for them. And it really wasn't the case at all. I just genuinely wanted to hang out with boys. Had there been boys in our social group, I wouldn't have gone anywhere.
This is 16, 17?
Oh, no, this is 12 and 13.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I was very young.
Yeah. All right.
Well, 16, 17, obviously.
Yeah, that tween age where, yes, the girls, it can get quite vicious with behavior. So even though you slayed back, you still ended up with the gorgeous best friend.
Yeah, and funnily, my best friends were sort of independent friendships, like one-on-one. In junior high, that was not the case because of this like mishmashing around. But my freshman year of high school, there's this girl named Summer who decided I was going to be her best friend. And she was very tall and very boisterous. We're still best friends to this day. She's still one of my loves in my life. And we couldn't be more different, but I actually rejected her because she was just too weird. I was just like, you are too much. I can't handle it.
What was your definition of her being weird?
Loud, embarrassing, just really out there, and I just didn't need it. You know what I mean? Like, I just was like, and she was very sort of like, you're mine, and I was sort of like, no, not, I don't know, I don't mind, go you. And so she just won over, she wore me down essentially. And yeah, and then we became best friends, and we were complete opposites in so many ways. But she was, she was crazy, and she was the kind of beautiful girl who didn't know she was beautiful, which made it even more annoying, frankly. But we would have times where like there was like 3,000 kids in our high school, and we'd have these assemblies, and we would get annoyed with the way everybody was sort of like, kind of falling into line and being proper. And so we would start acting like monkeys and jumping around, and we didn't like the idea that girls had to be proper. So we were always kind of pushing a feminist agenda by being as unfeminine as possible. And, just all sorts of, she's an incredible artist.
There's this possessive female energy that you're expressing from the tween ages upwards. Do you find that shifted after a time?
Yeah, I don't think I experienced it. Well, I did experience it a little bit at Carnegie the first year, because I made friends with a few people, but they were not my people. They were my friends, but they weren't my forever people. And I think that was disappointing for them to find out, but I kind of knew it, so I didn't think it was a thing. And it just took me a long time until I did. My best friend ended up being this woman, Nicole DeHuff, who passed away about 16 years ago now. And she and we didn't even become friends until the second year of college. And Sarah Roberts, who is also, as far as soulmates go and friends, we found each other at the zoo, because we had to do those animal projects. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And so we had gone to the zoo to do research of animals we were going to inhabit and play. And that's where she and but we had a very independent, like my friendships are very independent. They're not group oriented.
So those of you who don't know, who are just listening, there's an exercise that happens during freshman year of the training program where you have to go to the zoo, find an animal you connect to, and then act out as that animal as a presentation.
Yeah, you start off as the animal, and then you morph that animal into a human personality. And then everybody in the semester has to get together and have an animal party where you all show up as your new characters and interact. You remember that? I won best joke at
far more fun with it. And let me tell you why. I picked a gorilla.
Oh, I was a howler monkey.
Yeah, that would be far more fun. I just saw this gorilla and thought no one is going to want to do the gorilla. So I'm doing the gorilla. And what I'm doing is I'm just sitting on my backside and staring at you all. That was pretty much my mentality freshman year.
I turned into a man. I became a man. My character was named Murray Prusak.
Oh, beautiful.
You know what I realized years and years later? We had a reunion in Los Angeles. I don't know if you went to it. And one of our teachers was there, Tony McKay. And I saw him standing there, and he was jiggling change in his pocket, just like and it brought back this flood of memories. And I was like, oh my goodness. And Tony hated my character. He hated that I became a man. He just hated it. And I think now he hated it because I was accidentally playing a version of him.
Oh, okay. So then again, replicating an experience of seeing your dad go to the movies, right? Mm-hmm. And then you go to the movies and here you see a male figure and you're doing that without even realizing that that's what's happening.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize it at all. I think I was subconsciously trying to make him angry, but I tried to be a woman howler monkey. She started off as a nurse and it just wasn't working. I won best joke at that party. Okay. Murray Prusak and people didn't recognize me. It was pretty fun.
Wow. How did you get treated differently if they didn't recognize A, Emily, and B, there was this male figure they didn't know?
Yeah, they were I remember Dagmara coming up to me and doing a double take and not knowing who I was. A little eyeshadow goes a long way. I had a little mustache, a little hat on.
Did you find you had a different experience at the party when people didn't know who you were and thought you were male?
I guess so. I mean, I think they knew. I mean, they knew who I was. I mean, once you're there, I mean, there's only so many of us there. I think it was just like when I was walking down, they wouldn't recognize me right away. I don't think I was incognito.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Wasn't
right. There wasn't really a get to do an experiment of
No.
people. Right. And as you then continued throughout school, and you had a dear friend of yours, and those of you who don't know, Nicole Dehoff was in the original Meet the Parents movie, and she passed away in her early 20s.
No, she was 30.
Oh, she was 30. I thought she was younger than that. Thank you for the correction, which was a bit of a shock to everybody. How was that experience of losing a close friend? And then did you appreciate life more? How did you change your viewpoint upon life afterwards?
Well, what's interesting is that in college, I spent a lot of time, we sort of had this little three group, me, Melissa, and Nicole. Melissa passed when we were 26. Nicole passed when we were 30.
Oh.
And if you had asked anybody in college, who's going to survive the longest, I guarantee you no one would have voted me. So it was amazing. So for a long time, I figured my days were pretty numbered. I mean, the question I'm sort of struggling with is, did it make me appreciate life more? And I don't know that it did. I think that I don't know that it did, per se.
So you've had one dear friend pass, and did you and Nicole bond more because you lost a friend?
Yeah, I mean, we bonded over all kinds of things. We had a lot of big life. She'd gotten married. I ended up going to New York a year before her because she took a year off during when we were in college. And, I was close with her family and her husband's family. We just bonded over everything. We were
both
tight.
lost someone, and then you lost someone who you had bonded over a previous loss. Did you go down the rabbit hole?
What do you mean?
Well, when you have people so close to you and they're not there, if you didn't have more of a greater appreciation of life, did you find that you went into a dip period?
Well, interestingly enough, not right away, because I moved to LA the day she died. So this weird series of events happened where I was in Chicago previous to this, and she had been like, Emily, just move to LA, move to LA, move to LA. We had been in New York before that. She left for LA, I left for Chicago. And I'd been in Chicago 4 years. And in January, I had come out of 2005 and for her birthday. And I had been getting my ducks in a row. So at that point, I had just business wise, I'd gotten an agent out here. I got a job that was going to start in March. And I told everybody I was coming in March. I had to finish up teaching in Chicago. And then I gave myself a few weeks to kind of pull it together. And February 16th, I want to say it was the 15th, but I think it was the 16th. I knew she had been sick the week before, but it all happened very quickly and very suddenly. And basically her husband was like, you need to get on a plane and get here right now. And so I left my teaching job. I drove down to the Starbucks I was working at and told them that I wasn't going to be in my last 2 weeks of work and why. And I just kind of lost it there. And then as I was leaving there, I got a phone call from a mutual friend of ours, actually, that she had passed. And somehow I got to the airport. I don't actually remember. I think my brother drove me. And then I flew to LA and I showed up at an apartment, another mutual friend of ours from school. And there was 50 people I haven't seen in 8 years, from school. And it was just this weird, Nick's gone and Emily's here. There was just this flipping of doors. And I was supposed to move into her house and, it was all planned out. And so when I got here, I had this weird experience of having nowhere to live, but my business was starting. I had auditions. I started booking TV shows right away. Took about 6 months. And I sorted everything one by one. And during that year, my grandmother died, my other grandmother, my other grandfather, and my dog died. It was a lot. And so I always joke that when I was 30, that was the year like I became an adult, because all my sources of unconditional love left the planet. You know, that was it was officially over at that point. And it wasn't until 2008, end of 2007, when the recession hit, that I grieved. That's when the rabbit hole came, because I was too busy. I was too busy being in a new town, in a new business. And I had such a fire. Actually, I take it back. Your question about, it's not that I appreciated life more. It was that I appreciated my business more. I had this fire in me because I felt like I had missed Nicole, because I put off moving to LA until as an actor, I was prepared to succeed in LA. There's certain things you kind of have in place to succeed in LA as an actor. It's very hard. And so I got those things in place in Chicago, and I didn't move until I had them. And all those years, she was like, just come out, just come out. And I was like, no, 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 no. And so I felt like I had missed her because of that. So my need to succeed was through the roof. So I finished filming Maid of Honor, recession hits. I've just done a series of really good guest stars. I've got residuals for the first time in my life. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have to work. I didn't have a lot of money, but I had enough money to not work. And for the first time, I got to stop wiping tables and wiping butts, because I've been a waitress and a babysitter. You know, I'd worked very hard, but that silence, that emptiness, allowed all of this to come in.
Implosion.
Or to come out, you could say. And so I did. So I definitely fell apart during that time. And which is similar to what happens when you meditate for a long time. You know, it's like when you really dig in and spend time allowing your body to settle and allowing things to settle. Unaddressed things show up. You know.
So you had this big drive almost in honor of Nicole, from having missed her. Then the crash happened. You were at a stopping place. What techniques did you do to help you?
Well, at the time, I didn't have that much, to be honest. It lasted for a good 5 years. It was really hard. And I took it personally. I didn't take it through the right lens. I took it through my career fell apart. So I went around to every acting teacher in town saying, fix me, fix me. I suddenly can't act anymore. I'm not booking work. Even though the recession hit and like halved Hollywood, the work here in half, I didn't see it that way. I saw it was me who suddenly couldn't figure it out. It was very myopic, you know. And actually through that process, because I went to so many different classes, and I would be in class with people who I was like, because of our training and because of my experience, I was like, I don't belong in this class. And the teachers would be like, I don't know what to teach you. They're like, you're a great actress. Like, do you want to teach? And I would be like, no, I don't want to teach. Teachers are, you know, people who can't do. And so I really resisted it for a long time. And then Chris Connor, another really great actor from our school, who's another very, very good friend of mine, was like, you need to teach. And I was like, I don't want to teach. He's like, you need to teach. So he would send me job applications. And one of them was to this guy named David Kagan, who had a studio here in LA, who was also a Carnegie grad, but I think it was back when it was Carnegie Tech. Like, he was much, much older than us. And so I sat in on his class for a year for free, just watching him teach. Then I started teaching there. And I had taught in schools before that in New York and Chicago, but I taught little kids. So when he retired, I opened up my own studio. And so it was a long road of trying lots of different things, but I think teaching is the thing that got me out of it. That, and then I started to meditate. We have another friend, Abby Bramall, who is a meditation teacher as well. And I would go to her house and sit on Sundays. We would sit in group and meditate on Sundays. And that eventually got me into longer retreats. And so there was about, 4 or 5 years there where every winter I would go and meditate for anywhere between 30 days and a week, depending.
Mm-hmm. So the ability, sitting and listening, being nudged to go into teaching, giving back, right? Giving back to the world. Teaching is a vocation, a calling. And like most individuals, when there is a calling, who are really called to do it, they say no, right? That's the time.
Refusal
What
of
is
the call.
the mythos of that, right? The great teachers or the great individuals are, no, that's not me, find someone else. And they're pulled into that. And then again, through meditation, a practice that helped you go within, connect inward. So as a younger individual, quite happy to go be confident in yourself, go out on dates with yourself, and now reconnecting through that. And I know that you have that regular practice of meditation. And of course, the where meditation absolutely is behind having a meditation practice to help center yourself. And now here you are with your own studio for teaching, right, which is filling that aspect of you wholly, connecting in with meditation and also performing. What would you like to leave as your legacy?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I go back and forth about whether or not I think legacy is important at all. Sometimes I'm prepared to be dust, you know. I don't know, I think legacy is tough. I feel like I have a lot of tension around that question still, because I didn't have kids, and so I feel like I'm a little hung up on that. Like, I feel like that's mostly legacy. And then, so I don't know. I don't know what I want my legacy.
So that's
to be.
definitely something we could have Emily back for on another episode to unpack all of that. That's very weighty. Please remember to subscribe and like. And also, if it's not a legacy in a physical form, what would you like to do in the rest of your life to have the planet be a better place than when you got here?
Oh my gosh. Well, the only thing I think I could actually do that might be effective is, and this is just a hope, I don't even know if it's possible, is that the students that I teach, particularly right now, I teach acting for the camera. If I am able to help spur, push, or open up the possibility for, this is the thing that I think about a lot. Never in our history have human beings had access to every other human being, right? And we have it through our little phones right here, what you and I are doing right now. And so the need for people who are able to tell stories in the visual medium has never been more exquisite. So the ability to tell stories compassionately, truthfully, creatively, empathetically, is the foremost thing we could be called to right now. And I want to, if I can inspire this generation coming up to dominate and make use of this modality to heal our world, then maybe I'll have contributed in a small way.
What a beautiful sentiment, using the technology that we have in front of us to help make the world a better place. Well, I know those of you who are listening, I've got some wisdom, maybe a change in your perception from Emily. Please pop that down in the notes in the chat or email us. Her information is in the description. Those of you who are interested in meditation, you have our info. You've got Vedic Meditation Storybook, which is an ebook that is free to download with real stories from individuals who learned the practice, who you'd never think would, and how it changed their lives. You're going to move from the idea of meditation is only for the wealthy to seeing these people's lives change. And some of the stories will bring you to tears. It's written in their own words. It's absolutely not edited, so you can feel the vibration of that soul as they speak to you through the language. So please go ahead, and if you have Amazon, I think Kindle Unlimited, it won't even cost you a penny, a dime, a cent, whatever it is. So stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to get to rapid fire, fast, funny questions. I greatly appreciate Emily here, and we're going to say toodaloo, and we'll see you in a wee bit.